Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from Blue Tangerine entitled 5 Essential SEO Strategies. My name is Greg Bray, president of Blue Tangerine, and it's my privilege to be your host today for today's webinar, but I am not the presenter. I have presented some of these, so for those of you who are back with us again, you get the pleasure of hearing from Erik today. But before we dive in, just a few housekeeping items. For those who are new to GoToWebinar, there are a dashboard over on your screen that has an opportunity for you to enter questions as we go. Please feel free to use that throughout, and we'll be monitoring those and present as many questions as we can. We'll also have a few minutes at the end for questions as well. We certainly appreciate you taking the time. We know everybody's busy. We are recording today's webinar as well, so there will be an opportunity to view parts of the webinar in the future, and at the end you can also send an email to request a copy of the slides. So by all means take notes, but don't feel like you have to scroll down everything. We can get you copies of that information later so that you can be able to focus and pay attention to today's presentation. I'm excited to hear what we've got today from Erik Martinez. Erik is our VP, or Executive VP at Blue Tangerine, and he oversees our marketing services division. And Erik has an extensive experience in marketing, both offline and digital marketing online. And one of his areas of expertise is, of course, search engine optimization, which is today's topic. So we're really excited to hear some of the things Erik has. I think you'll find that today's information is going to be a little different from what you hear from most SEO companies, and it's going to give you some great insights and hopefully some action items that you can go back and work on, back in your companies right afterwards. So Erik, welcome, and please, it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Greg, appreciate it. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present to you all today. Just a little bit about Blue Tangerine. We're a full-service digital marketing agency headquartered in Melbourne, Florida. We specialize working with home builders and online retailers like yourself. So if at any point in time you have a question, please go ahead, put it in the question box, and we'll be happy to, I'll be happy to answer it. So let's dive right on in to the 5 essential SEO strategies. So most of the time you hear SEO people talk about content or keywords or whatnot. I'm not going to talk about any of that. Well, I am going to talk a little bit about content, but what types of content you should be focused on. But we're really going to be talking about things that are impacting or changing in the SEO world today and will impact our futures. So that's kind of my primary focus. So let's starting with mobile. As we all know, mobile usage is growing. It is a large percentage of the search traffic out there, over 50% at this point in time, and growing. So as we continue to see that change, there's a lot of changes going on with the search engines to make mobile a priority. So back in March, Google announced the mobile first index, and up to this point, the indexing has been primarily focused on desktop content. That is now starting to change. And so starting earlier this year, they started rolling out the mobile first index, and it's kind of a transition process. They are starting to index mobile content first and desktop content second. And that has some pretty significant implications. One of your questions might be, well, what if I don't have a mobile-friendly site? Well, at this point, I hope everybody has a mobile-friendly site. It doesn't mean that they won't crawl the site and index your content, but it is being indexed with a mobile first perspective, which essentially means that how you organize your content, how you prioritize your content is going to be taken into account first versus how you organize and prioritize your content on a desktop device. This may also change your linking strategy. So one of the big things in SEO is inbound links and on-page links between different pages of your site. Well, as you prioritize your mobile content, you may not have as much content on your mobile device as you do on your desktop device. And as a result, the number of links decreases. So that can impact certain types of authority that may be coming from third-party sites. So for example, if you are a content site and you have some inbound links from other content generators, let's say a newspaper or a high authority news organization coming into your site, and on their mobile site, they've removed that link to your site, that could have a very significant impact on the authority of your site and how it ranks. So some mobile essentials, really focused on page speed. Google formally announced making page speed a part of the algorithm a little over a year ago. So we've really spent a lot of time as a company talking to our clients about improving their page speed. And we certainly want to get our sites faster and faster, particularly on mobile devices. So there's a couple of tools that you guys can use to get insights. Google has a free tool. There's another one called Pingdom. If you guys request the slides at the end of this presentation, everything that I'm talking about has links to it, so you can link to the content and go to these resources directly. But this is a good way to get a visualization of what is going on with your site. Remember, page speed is at a moment in time. So at that particular moment, if you take a snapshot of a page, it's at that particular moment in time, and you may need to do multiple timings over time. To do that, Google Analytics has a page timing tool inside the Analytics console. We can show you how to use that, but it'll give you some insight as to which pages are loading quickly and which ones are loading slowly. It's not a perfect tool, but it will give you some insight as to where you might have some problems. All right, so where's my information priority? So our desktop sites, as we make images bigger and content bigger, we're getting a lot more scroll, but there's still a lot of data that says, hey, if it's not visible, it's not getting clicked on as much. That's really, really true on the mobile device as well. Even though people are used to scrolling or swiping up and down on their mobile devices, if the information isn't readily available on that visible screen and the page goes on and on and on, they're more likely to abandon. So here's a couple of examples from I Like Steak. And so I just picked this as an example where you can see 3 different implementations of some mobile sites. And the one I have circled over here to the right is Amazon, because Amazon probably does the best job right now of presenting all the essential information that a customer needs to make a buying decision above the fold or in the visible screen. So moving on to a home builder example, we work with both home builders and retailers. Here's an example from David Weekly Homes, and if you go to their site, they will show some information in the visible screen that's really relevant. And that includes community name, location, directions, breadcrumbs, images, and pricing. Those are the most important things that they show above the fold. Moving on to technical SEO. So again, mobile first, we've talked a little bit about that. We're going to talk a little bit about structured data and what that is. And essentially, it's a way to mark up content on your site and give additional description to that content. So an image is a great example where, you know, an image doesn't have any content other than the visual component. And using structured data, we can actually apply some meaningful description and context around that image so that it can be indexed and searched. The crawlability of the site, you know, making sure that the search engines have free and clear access to your content is really important. And then we've talked a little bit about site speed. So structured data, a great example of the use of structured data is in reviews. A lot of us have searched for products or services online, and we see the star ratings next to the listing, and those stand out to us relative to listings that don't have star ratings. And reviews are one of those things that is a conversion booster. So the more reviews you have, the more positive they are, the better chance you have of converting a customer either into a lead or to a sale. So this just happens to be one example of some structured data. Here's kind of the schema that goes behind the scenes on the page to bring these reviews forward on a search results page. Product info, and there's lots of different types of products. In this case, I'm using a softball hitting net, but you can see when you mark stuff up, you can get what Google calls a knowledge graph, and basically that knowledge graph is a description or an extra description of what this particular product is. And then in this case, Bonet comes up. Down here you see an Amazon listing, and there's a couple of elements in here that pop out. There's the star rating for this particular product, but there's also dimensions and things that come through in the listing that may not actually be in the description that they use for the product on the page. And that's where structured markup can be really helpful. So bringing this over to, another example here up at the top, again, these hitting screens in the shopping program within Google, you can now bring in sale pricing and show what the previous price was and a percentage change. That's actually pretty cool stuff. And you see down here some more descriptive elements, including pricing. That isn't necessarily, in the old days, we used to put that in the meta description manually and then hope that we remember to take it out when the sale was over. Now this stuff can be done dynamically. Over here for the home builder, there's actually a specific piece of structured data called the single family residence. And you can put things in like geo coordinates so people can find it, the address, the phone number of rooms, and square footage. And you can see here how New Home Source and Zillow are implementing that, and that shows up within their search listing. Gives you an edge on your competition.
Erik, a question on the structured data real quick before you move on, if we could. What about a company that is more of a business-to-business or a service provider? How would structured data impact it where they don't have a product the same way of these, for example?
There is a type of markup called the corporate markup, and that is essentially structured data about that particular company itself and the service that they offer. There are lots of other different types of structured data, but that's probably the most common one that we see. Or using some local markup. So the example would be like a law firm, that has offices in multiple cities. They don't necessarily have a product per se, but they have different locations that people can reach, and you can use local markup to address those offices and identify hours of operation and contact information for people who are specifically working in that office. Great question.
Great, thanks.
Yep. So back in the old days of SEO, it was all about keywords. But really today's game is, how do I maximize my result? How do I take more of the real estate on that search results page from my competition and more from me? So, and there's all sorts of tools and features that Google has provided us that we can leverage. So knowledge panels and knowledge graphs, we've talked a little bit about. Reviews, related questions, local listings, site links, images, videos. There's lots of different things, and you can take a look over here at this chart and see what Google is showing the most of. This was a study done, I believe, about a year ago, and it just goes through the top features that are showing by percentage. And you can see that, you know, knowledge panels are now showing up in over 50% of the pages. Now, for those of us doing e-commerce or lead generation, we are selling products. But the vast majority of searches out there are not about products. They're about questions and answers to specific things. And so we can build content that helps answer questions to get ourselves in those knowledge panels and get ourselves a boosted result. And I'll show you a couple examples. So Google in the last year has boosted the number of knowledge graphs that are showing up. Again, knowledge graph is something that answers a question. So here's a question: what is a knowledge graph in Google search? I get a Wikipedia result that comes up in what we call position 0, but at the very top of the page, before the ads, before anything else shows up, you get this this listing. And so by being able to answer a question about your products or services, you can actually and optimize around particular keywords, you can actually potentially show up. The downside of this is these are Google owned properties, so to speak. So any click-throughs to this don't necessarily get counted towards your branded search. They end up showing up as referrals in your results, which is totally fine. But you may see, if you get some of these and you get a lot of them on high volume pages, you may see some of your branded search results decrease and your referral results increase. Images, probably one of the most underutilized assets on a website. 27, almost 27% of searches are in the image search in Google. And we anticipate that this is going to increase because we are a visual society. We are focused on that. So there are several things you can do to help optimize your images by naming them, naming your image URL. It's just like your page URL, and it's crawlable. And if you have relevant keywords that are related to that image, that helps that image get indexed. And Google has spent a bunch of time working on classifying images by categories. And so if you go into their image search today, you'll see that there are lots of categories and there are sponsored ads. Not on every type of search today, but particularly in e-commerce, not as much in home building yet. I see that as a future thing. So you can name your images. You can use captions to describe that image. So that's content that's right next to the image that describes it, helps link that image to a description. You can fill in your alt and title text. I'm sure you heard that a lot, with descriptive sentences about that image. And then we can use structured data, and we can send Google an image sitemap to tell them what our images are so they can crawl them more effectively. Knowledge graphs, again, we talked a little bit about that, showed you an example. These are just some steps, and I'm not going to go through every one of these. Here's some actually specific steps from Propecta on how to make sure that you can qualify to get a knowledge graph on your results. So growing traffic, right? So essentially SEO is still a popularity contest. The biggest brands, the biggest sites, sites with the most engagement, they get the better ranking. So, you know, if you are in a business that's competing in retail, today you might see that Amazon is rapidly showing up in the top of the organic listings, made a concerted effort to get there. If you're in the home builder market, you may see listings from New Home Source or Zillow above your results because they are heavily focused on optimizing their sites for SEO, and they get so much traffic that if you're a mid-sized home builder out in the Midwest and you're competing against Zillow that has a national presence and lots of people coming in, they're going to get a little more relevance than you. There are some tricks to try to beat them, but grow your traffic and focus on engagement. So even if you can't grow your traffic a ton, growing it helps improve your relevancy, and then making sure that those people engage with the site, they stay on the site, and take some kind of action, whether that's a click through to another page or filling out a form. That shows the search engines that your site has stickiness, and they will raise your relevancy. And here's some, when you get the slides, some examples of that you can click through to get some ideas on how to do some user experience testing to help drive engagement and build credible build credible inbound links that have high authority. So again, a popularity contest, other sites that are popular link back to your site, you get some bonus points, so to speak, from the search engines to say that your site is more authoritative or trusted than somebody else who doesn't have that link coming from a well-known site. So focus on user experience, focus on link building, and then on-site activities.
Erik, a question on that user experience comment. You know, we see sometimes people, there's been a trend towards some of these one-page sites that are really long, where the link kind of just pushes you down the page. It sounds like what you're saying is that may not be great from an SEO standpoint, because you don't get that depth into the site and the additional clicking page to page. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, the research isn't a ton clear here. The way I would look at it is, if you have a reasonably complicated site. So if we were looking at a mid-size home builder with 5 communities in 5 different metro areas, if we had just a one-page site that focuses on that community, we can't spend enough time. We have to build a lot of content onto that one page for the search engines to rank. And we already know that the top, only the visible portions as a general rule is going to get clicked on. So you're losing an opportunity to show that you have relevancy in a particular metro area. So let's say that's Denver, Colorado versus Colorado Springs versus Pueblo, Colorado. So just using that as an example. On the other hand, if you have a very, very, very specific topic, we have a client who sells back massagers, and they really sell 5 products, but let's say they just sold 1, and it's just this back massager. In that particular case, it may be more beneficial for them than to try to invent content that isn't meaningful or additive, to keep to that one site where it's really focused on that specific product and the keywords around it. So I think it just depends on what your business situation. For the most of us, a multi-page site that has dedicated pages targeted at specific keywords is still kind of the best way to go.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to content. Rand Fishkin was the founder of Moz, which is historically has been one of the top resources for SEOs to go and learn and educate themselves. And they have been historically the thought leaders in the SEO industry. And Rand founded that company, and they are very, very, I use a lot of their content and review their site very regularly, because I learn a lot of great things. Now, they're not my only source, but they're one of my key sources. So anyways, you know, there are 10 things that he published several years ago that he thought were really important. And I've highlighted a couple here. Long form articles, we've talked a little bit about that. We haven't talked about complex data in a visual form, and we're going to be talking a little bit about video some more. But what types of content can you place on your site that will differentiate you from your competition? or how do you leverage that content more effectively on your site? So a lot of us have videos and we post them up on YouTube, but we forget to embed them into our own site and provide context for that video on our own site. So that's one particular example that you can actually build pages around your video content on your own site. Still host them on YouTube, but bring those videos to your site so people don't engage and leave and just go to YouTube to watch those videos. Infographics. So I was reading up on this right now with the mobile first mindset. Video is really important. Video is very consumable on a mobile device, but infographics are really consumable on a mobile device as well. And even though they're images, they communicate information really, really quickly. And so that's the type of content that we can wrap some structured data around to describe what this image is talking about. Behind the scenes, that's indexable, right? But to the consumer, it also gives them a quick way to go through and look, oh, that is great information and useful to know as I'm considering buying a home that's eco-friendly, and that's the type of image I got here. Long form content, you're going to start to see that there is some debate about how long form content is going to play out in a mobile first world. Historically, you'll see that the rankings are higher on long form content for pages that have a lot of content on it versus pages that have just a minimal amount of content. That may change over time. But here you can see an example chart for word count and rank. So the highest ranked pages have the highest amount of words on their page. And you can see this in a couple of different graphs. Again, coming back from some stuff from Moz. But look at that, over 2,000 words. That's a lot of content to be writing. Typically, you'd see that sort of thing maybe in a white paper or a really long blog post. Let me jump back to that for a second. So, but again, there's some evidence that may say long form content may be too much to consume on the small screen, and maybe something that we have to rethink or put into bite-sized chunks. Another thing from Rand Fishkin about the types of content and that you can have and what you need to focus on. He did this, I believe, it's about 5 years ago, and it's still really relevant today. You want your content to be uniquely valuable to the people who are coming to the site. What is it that makes you different? You want to make sure that you're focusing on keyword targeting. I told you we wouldn't talk a lot about it, so that's all I'm going to say is really need to do a lot of great keyword and focus on long tail. Make sure that your metadata and your schema data is generating rich snippets, and make sure that all that content's filled in and it's not duplicate content, because that's one of the first places that the search engines crawl and can have a significant impact. And then make sure that your social media pages have sharing value. It's a popularity contest, so the more you can get people to engage in social media, the more popular you are, that gets passed on to your brand. So long form content example, this company called King Arthur Flour. They are probably one of the best companies I've seen over the years that do this. They happen to sell baking products, baking supplies and products, and they integrate their blog with their products to create a selling experience. But they write a ton of content. And so it's a great site to go look at and see how they're integrating their content and using keywords to target specific things and drive traffic back into their site. Oops, hang on one sec. Video. So there's a little video here. I won't play it because we always seem to struggle to get them to play correctly on a webinar format. But you can use metadata to describe that content. So you can caption, you can use alt tags, you can use H tags, and some of this is a little bit technical and behind the scenes, and you may need your developers to help your SEO team get this content on your site accessible to your CMS so you can optimize your video content. And again, implement some structured data to provide more context around the video. Again, that all that content is indexable, and that will help improve your rankings. So moving on to voice search, this is our last topic, and this is, I won't play this video, but you guys may remember Amazon rolled out this funny Alexa ad during the Super Bowl. And essentially the point of this particular video from my perspective is we're starting to engage with these devices like they're human beings. We're talking to them, we're asking them questions, and we're expecting them to return answers. And so the implication is, as we move along, that as the amount of these devices start to increase and voice search becomes more and more prevalent, how does that impact search? How does that impact our website and the ability for customers to find us? So now we not only need to think about the written word, we need to think about the spoken word and how people are using the spoken word to find the information that they're looking for. So here you see some statistics on millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers and their adoption of voice search. And you can see millennials are driving the trend, but everybody else is growing too. And this trend is going to continue going forward. Another example of the number of smart speakers that are projected to be in homes over the next few years, looking at close to 70 million households in 2022. Now that's a projection. It might be a little bit higher, might be a little bit lower, but think about how these devices are starting to penetrate your home. They're going to be penetrating your cars. They're going to be penetrating your offices. And we're going to be interacting with these devices, and we're going to be asking them questions about the products and services that we sell. It's important to note who owns the device, who's the manufacturer. And I have talked to some friends of mine who have both a Google Home and an Amazon Echo, but the vast majority of people pick one. And I know some people who are putting these devices in multiple rooms, not only in the living room, the family room, sometimes even in their bedrooms. And it's really important to know that because whoever owns the speaker can influence the result. And here's some data that somebody, Bain and Company, found that shows that in Amazon's case, Amazon is promoting their brands over people in their marketplace. Yet Amazon makes a ton of money from other companies selling on their marketplace, but they make more margin if they sell their own branded products. So just remember that whoever owns the speaker owns the result. And so you have to understand that motive as you're starting to optimize for this technology in the future. So according to Search Engine Land, one of the important things that voice assistants are using are featured snippets or rich snippets, again, going back to that structured data. And they're suggesting that you need to optimize your structured data because that'll help in voice search. But that evidence is not necessarily true. Found this snippet from another organization called Backlinko. They did some testing and they found that schema may not play a key role in voice search rankings. That may be a function of the fact that the prevalence of schema markup out on websites is still pretty low, so it may be a little bit of an adoption thing. I think it's too early to tell, but there are some things that you can focus on that you can impact today. Page speed, we've talked about that. Secure sites, we've talked about that. Social engagement and popularity, we've talked about that. making sure your content's easy to read. And according to their research, the average voice search result is written at a 9th grade level. So make it really easy to understand. And then long form content, again, there's this push and pull between a mobile first environment and being able to provide enough context so that voice assistants and AIs can figure out what a particular page. This is all new technology. It's going to change, and then 12 months from now, we'll be having a different discussion as to what's important in this area. But you should start preparing now for that future. So just a couple parting thoughts on SEO. I think voice search and mobile search will continue to converge. So the example is, I'm in my car and I'm asking Siri or Cortana or any one of these voice assistants or Google, show me a new single family homes and the implications near me under $500,000. And that might end up being just a voice result that gives me the top 2 or 3 communities in the area. Or on an e-commerce context, what would it be? What would you see if voice search were linked with visual results? And so envision a smart TV connected to Alexa and displaying results on a screen for a query like, Alexa, please show me men's trail running shoes and size 7. So these technologies are going to continue to converge. And there is a lot of evidence that voice image recognition technology is starting to make its way. So, you know, the integration of a camera and a voice activated digital assistant and you asking a question will return results on devices in multiple ways that we haven't even thought of today. So that concludes the presentation. I hope I gave you a couple of tips and a couple of things to think about as you're optimizing your sites or you're working with your SEO teams. If you want to get the slides, again, everything is linked. There's lots of links in there, so I'd recommend that you reach out to me. Just please email me your name, company name, phone number to me, or go to bluetangerine.com/contact us and then mention the SEO webinar slides, and we'll make sure that you get a copy of the slides. And then just a limited offer here to get a free 1-hour digital marketing consultation. If you're one of the first 3 people to text me, and I'll give you my phone number here in a few minutes, be happy to do a little consultation. So I'll have a little chat with you to discuss a particular topic. I'll do some research on that topic, and then we'll have a call to discuss that particular topic with you. So here you go. Here's my phone number. It's 630-263-9912. Again, it's 630-263-9912. And if you send me your name, company name, and email address, we'll make sure that I reach out to the first 3 people.
Well, thanks, Erik. That's terrific information. And again, that number, I put it in the chat box, folks, if you didn't get the phone number to text Erik, so you can take advantage of that offer. And really appreciate it. If you do have any questions, we do have a few minutes left to take some questions, so please drop those in the question box. If you haven't yet, we've got a couple here, but please, if you've got any other questions you'd like Erik to address, put those in the question box there in the control panel on the side of your screen. Erik, one question that came up, so you were talking on the voice search about the search near me. How does somebody optimize for a phrase like near me? How does that work?
Well, that's changing. There are businesses right now who literally in their content will put, in their metadata content, will put the near me phrase. So home builder with a community, let's say in a suburb of Denver, might say, new homes near Denver, Colorado, as an example, or new homes near Colorado Springs. They may actually be searching for a home in Monument or another suburb of Colorado Springs, but Colorado Springs is the main metro area. So that's one example. The other thing that's happening is because our devices are always on and we've got GPS and location services turned on. If you have location services, a lot of it's implied now. So if I'm in my car and I'm searching for restaurants, I don't say near me. I say find restaurants, find fast food restaurants. And because the device knows where you are, it will pull up the most relevant results for that. So that technology starting to change, and you see a lot of sites popping up, hey, we'd like to track your location. And that's one of the reasons for it, so they can tailor results to where you are.
So then would it be about making sure you've got address information or latitude and longitude coordinates on these pages as well then to help with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's all sorts of structured data things that you can do on the site to bring that information and make sure it is present, particularly if you are a home builder with multiple communities or you're a retailer with multiple stores.
Great. Another question we've got here is you talked about the device controlling the results. How can we beat Amazon if they've got the device and they're going to show their stuff first?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know the answer to that one because that is still evolving. You know, is Amazon going to be credible enough for people to continue to buy the Echo devices and put them in their homes, or will they buy a Google Home because they feel it's more credible for the types of questions that they're going to ask? I don't know. I think that at the end of the day, the consumers will make that determination.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Another question. You've given us a lot to look at. If we only did one thing, what should we do first?
Make sure your baseline SEO optimization's in place. At the end of the day, making sure your page titles have relevant keywords and phrases and location information, particularly for builders or retailers with stores. Making sure your on-page content that you have already is optimized for relevant keywords and phrases. That's where I would start. Absolutely every single time on day one.
Great. You mentioned another question on the image optimization. You talked about naming the image file. Is there any specific way that we should name the image files?
As a general rule, you don't want the URLs to be too long. So, you know, if you have an image that's showing a home, let's say in a suburb of San Antonio, Texas, you know, in this particular case, you could put the model name, and the city, state, and leave it at that. That might be a simple example. If you have a retail store, a picture of a retail store in a specific location, you might actually put the address elements into that. This is the Target store on Iowa Street in Lawrence, Kansas. That might be a great way. So be as descriptive as you can, but keep it short. The alt title, the captioning, the structured data can provide more description of that particular image. I think that's a great question.
And this is my follow-up to that, Eric. Would you separate in that file name? Would you put spaces or hyphens or underscores between those different words? What's the recommendation there?
You definitely want to do hyphens. as a general rule, that's the best practice versus underscores today. Easy to read, separates it, and Google parses that, and Google and Bing parse that. I see a question coming in over here. This applies to B2B. This all applies to B2B as well as consumer-facing websites. Yeah, absolutely. I didn't really talk a lot about B2B, but definitely, you're selling a product or a service, and it all applies.
All right. Well, thanks, Erik. I think we're past our 45 minutes here, so want to be respectful of everybody's time. But thank you so much for the effort. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We certainly appreciate it. We do have some more webinars coming up in the next few months. So if you are not on the Blue Tangerine email list, please go to bluetangerine.com and subscribe, so you make sure you get notifications about those webinars, and watch for the recordings that we'll put out there if you're interested in that. And again, email Erik if you want a copy of the slides, Erik@bluetangerine.com, Erik with a K at bluetangerine.com. And if you want to text him for that free marketing consultant, that number was 630-263-9912. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.